The relentless cascade of revelations left the three men thoroughly deflated, the realization dawning that she had orchestrated everything long before breathing a word to any of them. Ray exhaled in resignation. "What else?" Aster raised a tentative hand. "Adeline, do you truly need to go to such extremes?" Adeline answered without a heartbeat's pause. "Absolutely. I have laid out everything. Did I leave something unclear?" Aster tried once more. "The mercenaries in Mokran. You could hire through intermediaries. I am certain they are rough and barely civilized." Adeline chuckled. "That is precisely the point. They need to be that formidable to survive the night forest." Privately, she mused, if I told them I also planned to awaken a sleeping siren, they would collectively drop dead from shock. Aloud, she said, "There is another reason I need a ship." Aster spoke with measured sincerity. "Adeline, given the circumstances, we cannot give you an answer this instant. You must understand, the moment you step beyond these walls, every soul out there becomes your enemy." His voice softened. "You are important to us, Adele." Adeline met his gaze, solemn and resolute. "Those words carry more weight than you know. But I still have a great deal to entrust to all of you. The role of a seer is every bit as crucial as you are to me. So I will give it everything I have." Their gazes lingered on her, touched yet threaded with unmistakable worry. But Adeline steeled herself, thinking, "I should set these feelings aside. This is nothing more than a transaction of mutual benefit. Stop looking at me like that. The moment my usefulness runs dry, you would cast me aside without hesitation. That is the nature of our arrangement. I never once imagined they might actually care about me." Just as she pivoted to leave, Ray's voice halted her. "When do you plan on leaving?" Adeline whirled around, violet eyes blown wide, staring at him in disbelief. Aster blinked. "Captain," Ray answered evenly. "We have heard everything she intends to do. There is no grounds to refuse her. Approval or denial aside, if this journey poses that much danger, we simply accompany Adele ourselves." Aster shifted uneasily. "Even still." Ray hesitated, then called out, "Hey!" Adeline, thoroughly exasperated by their waffling, cut him off. "I have a name. It is Adeline." She had not even managed to break her own husband of his habit of addressing her like a stranger, so what hope did she have of coaxing genuine affection from him? Ray closed the distance, his voice softening. "Tish, fine, Adeline." Adeline narrowed her eyes. "And do not click your tongue at me." Ray averted his gaze, wrestling something gentler past his lips. "All right, Adele, darling." The endearment sent color flooding into his cheeks. He cleared his throat hastily. I will accompany you and follow your lead, so put your mind at ease." Adeline went completely still, blindsided by his expression. "What?" Ray puzzled over her reaction. Why is she looking at me like that? All I said was that I would do whatever she wanted. He pressed, "Why are you reacting that way?" Adeline's face burned crimson, one hand rising to cover her mouth as she genuinely wrestled with the sincerity of what had just transpired. I am sorry. I never imagined you would call me darling." Her voice dipped, barely above a whisper. "Thank you." Ray could not fathom what she had endured for those two words to carry such weight, but warmth crept across his own face all the same. Had he known the reason, it would have shattered his heart. Turning on his heel, he muttered, "Do not thank me for something that trivial. You are the Duchess. Do whatever you please. That is the rule." His two subordinates, witnessing their stoic master unravel for the very first time, exchanged knowing smirks behind his back. Adeline, sincerely moved, wondered, "Something feels different this time around. Can I dare to hope, even just a little, for something from him?" Inside a cramped, lightless manor, blood tapped a slow rhythm against the floor as a red-haired girl hunched amid the carnage, whispering, Why? For what purpose?" A silver divine sword rested on the ground, ringed by the small, still corpses of sacrificed animals. Hala gazed hollowly at the aftermath of her ritual, fury simmering beneath her skin. Why can I not see their futures? Harash Venzak, Aster Lefa, Wakan Huin. Their fates should be laid bare before me. When did this obstruction begin? She gnawed her nails raw with frustration. I saw it clearly, the vision of them guiding me through the night forest. Chicken blood, goat blood, sheep blood, pig blood. None of it pierced the veil anymore. She glowered at the gore-slicked basin in front of her, revulsion twisting her lips. Never mind the future. Even my psychic sight is collapsing. I could read every soul's destiny except theirs. Why? Hela clenched her jaw. This is becoming dire. If this persists, he will deem me worthless. Elsewhere, Ray sat in solitude, drowning in thought, Adeline's presence occupying every corner of his mind. He replayed her blazing conviction when she had bent his will to her plan, her quiet vow to settle into peaceful estate life after a decade, and her bold declaration that she would shield her oh-so-suspicious husband. The way she had squared up to him, insisting he use her name. The tremor in her voice when he had jokingly called her darling. Ray pressed his clasped hands against his chin, lost in the spiral of it, until Aster strode in with his hands planted on his hips and gravity etched across his face. Captain, we need to talk. Are you truly accompanying Adeline to Mokran City? Ray did not waver. Yes. Aster erupted, Captain, have you lost your mind? Adeline is invaluable to us. We cannot risk her being wounded, or worse, killed. And you want to drag her into that cesspit? Ray held his stare and cut in. Aster, do I strike you as weak? Aster fell silent for a beat, then exhaled. That is not the point. You are stronger than anyone alive, but shielding another person in combat is an entirely different matter. You understand what Mokran City is. Even noble houses station entire squads of knights as escorts there. Abductions, robbery, murder, and far worse unfold in those streets without a whisper reaching the outside world. I trust Adeline's judgment, but catastrophe does not discriminate. Go if you must, but she cannot. Ray faltered, but Aster bore down. Since when do you bend to anyone else's wishes? You have always disregarded everyone. Ray turned the question inward. Why? When did I begin feeling compelled to honor her every request, from the mundane to the outlandish? What drives me to fulfill each one without question? Why does my entire body lock up the moment her eyes meet mine? He murmured. Aster, am I strange? Aster grimaced, raking a hand through his hair. Honestly, I am just relieved you are finally noticing. Ray bowed his head, sinking deeper into reflection. Aster sighed. You will go regardless of what I say, will you not? I can see you are changing. I have held my tongue about it because I do not like what I see. The debate concluded and preparations moved forward without further objection. In the storehouse, Aster surveyed the shelves. We have Meldor stones and scrolls in abundance. Let us refine a portion into magic stones to carry with us. I suspect excursions like this will become the norm. Ray glanced up. Aster, thank you. The day of departure arrived almost too quickly, winter pressing close at its heels. Adeline peered through the window, murmuring, There is a bite in the air today. Catherine nodded in agreement. December is already upon us. Should you not layer something warmer, my lady? Adeline smiled gently. This cloak suits me fine. I am more concerned about you catching cold. Catherine's cheeks flushed pink, visibly touched. I will manage, truly. Adeline declared. I will find one exactly like mine for you once we arrive. I refuse to let anyone under my care freeze. Catherine's eyes glistened. My lady! Out in the corridor, Wakan and Maven stood waiting. Maven waved with characteristic cheer. Oh, Adeline, all set to go? He wrestled with an enormous, absurdly heavy suitcase. I summoned Wakan because my arms were about to give out. Wakan leveled an unforgiving stare. Pathetic. You need to train. Maven whined. I am an ordinary human being, Wakan. Adeline observed her retainers, a shadow crossing her thoughts. If one reason above all others compels me to hasten this journey, it is Maven. In my previous life, we sailed to Mavane Island to slay monsters, evidence that the Demon King's power was swelling. If the current of time runs the same course, the siren will stir from slumber in 517. I cannot afford to wait that long. Maven perished battling the siren at Wakan's side. That is precisely why I must act while the creature still sleeps. Adeline spoke with quiet conviction. Rest easy, Maven. I will keep you safe. Both men stiffened at her words. Wakan cocked an eyebrow. Is shielding people some kind of pastime for you, Adel? Scratching his chin, he added. First you swore to protect the captain, and now Maven? Maven wailed with theatrical despair. Do I truly appear that helpless in your eyes, my lady? Composing himself slightly, he protested. I am not inherently fragile. It is simply that every soul surrounding me is a superhuman freak. Wakan bristled at the word freak, but Adeline addressed Maven with dry composure. Is that so? Then make sure you sprint when danger arrives. Maven heaved the suitcase forward, grumbling under his breath. What I mean is, reasoning with Wakan is like arguing with a boulder. Wakan snickered. Look at him pouting again. Adeline watched Maven shuffle away, then fixed her gaze on Wakan. You are not a bad person. Quit needling him. I know you are actually fond of him. Wakan recoiled. Are you talking about me? She held firm. I am, and if you do not stop, you will carry that regret for the rest of your life. The memory surged unbidden. In her previous life, the moment Maven died, Wakan had crumbled completely, cradling his body and howling in anguish. That scene must never repeat itself, she thought. Wakan shifted topics. Incidentally, what is the name of the mercenary outfit we are meeting? Adeline tilted her head. Did I not mention it? The Eagle Mercenaries, also called Black Wind. Wakan broke into a cold sweat. Adeline, you do understand what Black Wind is, correct? She answered without breaking stride. Perfectly. Wakan pushed harder. Then you are aware they traffic in human lives? Adeline kept walking, tossing the reply over her shoulder. Yes, I am. Wakan's voice cracked. And you still want to deal with them? Adeline continued forward, unflinching. It feels as though Ray, Wakan, and Aster still see me as a child who needs minding. Wakan sputtered. That is not. It is simply too dangerous. Adeline halted and turned to face him. And so what? Would you rather cage me behind your backs and bar me from my own plans simply because the road is perilous? Wakan had no answer. Adeline pressed on. Yes, I understand your worry stems from my value to the group. Once, even twice, I can interpret it as genuine concern, but I am not a porcelain doll for you to position on whatever shelf you deem safest. Wakan stared, struck speechless. She continued. You asked whether protecting people is my hobby, did you not? Wakan muttered. Well, yeah, because... Adeline said firmly, I know how I must look to you, small, fragile, someone who cannot so much as lift a blade. But recall who it was that rekindled the light in that holy sword. Please remember that I possess the strength to shield others as well. I am utterly finished cowering behind people while contributing nothing. Turning once more, she broke into a radiant smile. So I hope you understand. Are we clear? Channeling a thread of foundational magic, Adeline wove a spell and tore open a portal. Wind erupted with a roar, dragging her through a corridor of darkness before depositing her in the heart of the forest. Ray, already at her side, asked, Holding up all right? She nodded. Perfectly fine. Wakan struggled to accept what he had just witnessed, his brow furrowed with lingering concern. But Adeline insisted this second teleportation had gone far more smoothly than the first. Her husband said, I see. I was told this is only the second time you have done this. Pride radiated from her expression, and she understood she would need to lean on this ability countless times going forward. Since I declared to Wakan that I can protect others, I must live up to those words. Meanwhile, Wakan blinked back tears of astonishment. Forced to concede, he had woefully underestimated her. Rubbing his chin, he reasoned. Though humans worship divas and asuras alike, the true conduit of authority is someone else entirely. Divine energy gravitates toward seers. Both asuras and divas channel power from the tree of life, and seers are extraordinarily rare. That must be why Adeline mastered teleportation so rapidly. A grin spread across Wakan's face, deeply satisfied that their ranks boasted such a formidable asset. Fortune smiled on us. The captain landed himself a wife like Adele. Ray, conversing beside her, he found his attention drifting to how impossibly captivating she appeared with dappled sunlight, dancing through the canopy onto her features. He thought, Adele, I am certain of it now. I have not lost my mind. My conversation with Aster only confirmed what I already suspected. I become a complete fool whenever it involves her. Lost in that thought, he noticed the ribbon securing her hair slip free, releasing a waterfall of luminous golden waves. Adeline turned toward him, incandescent as a sunflower, her crystalline violet eyes gleaming. She is breathtaking, he thought. Every single time I look at her, this moment most of all. Ray snatched the ribbon from the air as it drifted toward him, feeling thoroughly wretched. How do I have the audacity to call myself Durlo? Wakan's eyes shone, beholding his mistress with unabashed reverence. The object of their awe, however, was silently reeling. Why does everything feel so unsteady? That teleportation left my stomach in knots. She accepted the ribbon from Ray's hand, visibly unsteady on her feet. They continued deeper into the forest, Wakan, Adeline, and Ray moving as a trio. Wakan cautioned, "This woodland teems with orcs that prey on humans, remnants of the beasts that once claimed this territory." Adeline cast a sharp glance sideways, every sense heightened. Naturally. During her previous life's visit to Macran, she had observed the enormous beast traps bristling with sharpened wooden stakes flanking the city gates, silent testimony to what lurked beyond the walls. Wakan had briefed her on Mokran's defenses back then, and every word had proven true. Adeline watched Wakan's every predictable gesture with fond amusement, delighting each time she anticipated his next remark before it left his lips. Her playful ribbing of Wakan prompted Ray to steal glances over his shoulder again and again. He found himself thinking, does she enjoy being doted on that much? Next time, I will be the one to... His expression turned contemplative, wrestling with this momentous revelation, just as the trees gave way and their destination materialized before them. This was the legendary Mokran city. A genial brown-haired man beckoned them toward Maho Inn, extolling extraordinary baths at rock-bottom prices and beds finer than anywhere on the continent. A second man with gray-blue eyes offered complimentary bowls of the local signature soup. Adeline practically vibrated with excitement, while Ray observed coolly, "The city overflows with mercenaries and travelers. This is simply how it operates." Adeline let out an exaggerated sigh. "Obviously. Which is exactly why I could never understand your refusal to bring me here, what with all these perfectly normal tourists wandering about." Ray conceded with visible reluctance, "All right, point taken," and Adeline pumped her fist in triumph. "Thank you." A wave of déjà vu washed over her, memories of standing in these same streets in another lifetime. Genuinely curious, she remarked, "I can understand the concentration of mercenaries, but I never expected this volume of ordinary tourists." Ray elaborated, "Minimal taxation, cheap commodities, gambling halls, and combat arenas. People flock here to chase the thrill." He launched into an unexpectedly thorough explanation. Adeline, taken aback, realized, he is not irritated in the slightest by explaining things to me. I have misjudged him in so many ways. Gratitude widened her eyes as she gazed at him. They drew near the arena where handbills whirled through the air advertising the day's gladiators and the tantalizing betting odds. Ray plucked one mid-flight, thoroughly unimpressed. This explains the frenzy in the streets. Wakan examined a flyer of his own. Every year around this season, Macran erupts into this spectacle. Adeline studied a handbill depicting a battle-scarred gladiator, and recognition struck her like lightning. That contender gunning for the championship, he is the great thief of hell. The tournament kicked off tomorrow. Structured like the Premier League, the bracket held no mysteries for Adeline. Armed with foreknowledge from her previous life, she began calculating exactly how to turn a massive profit betting on the predetermined winner. The leader of the Eagle Mercenaries had once remarked that the great thief fell to a careless blunder, a match where only the house walked away richer. She piped up, "Ray," and he leaned in attentively. "What is it?" Adeline brandished the flyer, beaming like a flower in full bloom. "How about we make ourselves some money tomorrow?" Ray folded his arms, wearing an expression of profound exasperation, while Wakan fretted that the arena's savagery might overwhelm her. Adeline waved off their concerns. "I have spent an enormous amount at the Venzak estate, the arena construction, the knight's dormitory, the renovations, the furnishings. It is high time I replenish the coffers." Wakan eagerly tried to anticipate her strategy, boasting that he could identify the champion with a single glance and volunteering himself as the resident betting expert. But the Venzak couple both knew perfectly well who the real seer among them was. Wakan scratched his head, the realization of his blunder dawning, and fell obediently into step behind his mistress, conceding he had been teaching a fish to swim. Adeline shifted her attention to Ray. "Care to give it a try?" He blinked. "What exactly is this betting business?" Wakan's jaw dropped. "Captain, you have lived 500 years and you do not know what betting is?" Ray stiffened with embarrassment. "I have never wasted time on frivolous pursuits." Wakan took personal offense at hearing such a high-stakes affair dismissed as frivolous, but could not out-argue Ray on his best day. Adeline noted that Wakan clashed with her far more freely than he ever dared with Ray, who remained surprisingly open to discussion. Was it her mistake? Wakan distilled the rules. It is straightforward. Tomorrow, the gladiators' names go up on the board, and we simply pick our fighter. Ray processed quickly. Established favorites yield narrow payouts, while long shots offer steep returns. Turning to Adeline, he added, I suspect you have an ulterior motive beyond simply earning coin. Adeline, having successfully enlisted her husband, clapped with delight. Wow, Captain Ray is so perceptive. Laughter bubbled out of her, but beneath it ran a quieter thought. Why does his expression radiate such warmth? Was he ever like this in my previous life? Without warning, Ray reached over and tapped her forehead with one finger. Do not let gambling become a habit. Even if you lose every coin, we have more than enough for you to spend however you wish. Both Adeline and Wakan went rigid with surprise as Ray recounted, there was once a man named Ballin who could not resist the thrill of a wager. I took him under my wing and disciplined him for driving himself and his family to ruin, yet he still hurled every spare coin at bets the moment my back was turned. That is how it always ended. Regret shadowed his eyes. Leaning down with unexpected tenderness, he murmured, If you insist on gambling, then I suppose I will simply have to work harder so you never go hungry. Adeline crossed her arms and puffed out her cheeks. I have never been anything like that. Ray and Wakan both chuckled at her indignant pout. Wakan, thrilled to witness this softer facet of his captain, realized Ray confided more freely with Adeline than he ever had with his own right hand, even when directly asked about the past. Watching them together like this, I cannot help but admire this side of the captain. Wakan puffed out his chest, announcing he had toiled mightily to secure rooms in this perpetually overbooked inn, ensuring his mistress would not sleep in the gutter or bring down the captain's wrath upon his head. Adeline's genuine gratitude sent a warm glow through Wakan's chest. The polished innkeeper greeted them with exuberant hospitality. Honored guests, I understand you have reserved a royal suite and a deluxe room. Is that correct? Adeline marveled at Manhwa Inn's opulence, then froze mid-admiration, turning slowly toward Ray. Wait, he said a royal suite? She addressed the receptionist. Did you say one deluxe room and one royal suite? The exuberant man confirmed with relish, extolling the royal suite's cavernous bath designed for the ultimate in relaxation. Tempting as it sounded, hold on, she rounded on Wakan. What exactly is the arrangement here? What do you mean? Wakan replied with a conspiratorial wink that screamed, Just enjoy it. Go on, praise me. Adeline whirled to Ray with theatrical horror. Wait, Ray, are we sharing a room? Ray, utterly deadpan, responded, We are married. Would it not be stranger if we did not? Adeline had no real objection in principle, but she had assumed he would find the proximity distasteful. In her previous life, he had never once shared a room with her, not in 25 years of marriage. Flustered beyond recovery, she stammered, I assumed you would find it awkward. Ray's brow creased with genuine confusion. Why on earth would you assume that? The straightforward sincerity of it sent heat rushing to her cheeks. Adeline short-circuited. Huh? Ray countered. You are the one who does not want to share a room with me, then? Adeline's heart nearly seized in her chest. She drew a long, steadying breath, ordering herself to think. This man does not intend anything romantic by it. Do not be a fool and read meaning into empty words. I must never forget what happened last time. Only by summoning the memory of her first life's bitter end did she regain equilibrium. Keeping my emotions leashed is enough. That way I will not be wounded again. She lowered her gaze, lashes casting shadows across her cheeks. Fine. It is too late to change the booking regardless. Half turning away, she added, Let them show us the way. My feet are starting to protest. Ray watched her retreating figure in silence. The promise he had made, to grant her every wish, echoing through his mind. And then, ta-da! The receptionist unveiled their 1,000-square-meter palatial suite, laid out like a luxury apartment. 2 bedrooms separated by a staggering 999 meters, a gargantuan soaking tub dominating the center, and a tea table nestled among an array of lavish amenities. Adeline silently cheered at the continental rift between the beds, though a faint ache tugged beneath the relief. Perhaps that is precisely why Ray felt comfortable agreeing to share a room with someone. The tension drained from her expression, replaced by cautious ease. Then Ray spoke abruptly. Come here a moment. What is it? Adeline asked, bewildered as he guided her forward. But his stiffness dissolved the instant he brought her to the window. revealing a sweeping panorama of Makran City ablaze with life, the finest view from the most coveted vantage point in the inn. She stared, wonderstruck, then broke into an exclamation of pure delight. Beside her, the man who had quietly bankrolled this extravagance stood with arms folded and a satisfied smile playing at his lips. "Are you pleased?" he asked. "Completely," she answered, her smile sweet enough to melt stone. "Good," he said, sneaking one last glance at her, thinking, "In 500 years of existence, I have never felt this craving to see someone smile. Not an unpleasant sensation at all." The tender interlude dissolved, the scene cutting to a dim, smoke-tinged room where a silver divine sword and an insignia badge rested side by side on a scarred table. A man tapped his fingers in an unhurried rhythm, waiting. The door swung open and another figure stepped through. "Boss!" "What is it, Koken?" The leader tilted the brim of his hat upward, and Koken reported, "I spotted some curious characters around lunchtime. A woman dressed in men's clothing, a nobleman, and a soldier." The leader raised his beer, amber eyes gleaming cold above the rim. "Curious how, exactly?" Koken explained that their booking of a deluxe room at Manhwa Inn betrayed considerable wealth. The leader drummed his fingers, weighing the information. "That loaded, are they?" He rose with sudden, predatory decisiveness. "I despise complications. Snatch the girl while the other two are occupied, and I will make sure you see your cut of the spoils. Move now." Once settled, the group ventured into the city proper. Adeline threw herself into shopping with infectious enthusiasm, waving the others toward a fabric stall. "Is this the famous Makran lace I have heard so much about?" She plunged into the textiles, running her fingers over each bolt and lavishing praise on their craftsmanship. The vendor grinned. "You are even lovelier than the fabrics, miss," Wakan observed with wide eyes. "Adeline would have sulked for a century if we had kept her from this place." Ray agreed with a silent nod, standing patiently as she indulged. Wakan, whose patience ran considerably shorter, announced he needed to arrange a carriage in the capital for the next leg of their journey, and inquired about the length of their stay. Adeline answered, 4 days will suffice. Reaching Mavane Island takes priority, and the Eagle mercenaries will be reaching out regarding the funds I mentioned. Wakan bid them a warm farewell, exchanging easy, affectionate goodbyes with Adeline. Left alone together, Adeline tilted her head. "Shall we continue shopping?" Ray, wholly unprepared for a marathon retail expedition, looked faintly miserable but offered no resistance. Adeline promptly conscripted him as her personal bag carrier. Surveying the growing mountain of parcels, guilt pricked at her. "I should have sent a few of these back with Wakan." She reached out. "Let me take some of those." But Ray, caught off guard by her consideration, did not find the weight burdensome in the least. He turned away. "It is fine. You clearly want to visit somewhere else. Lead the way." His quiet chivalry caught her off balance, heat rising in her cheeks as she faltered. But, deciding the load was still cumbersome, she suggested he ferry the bags back to the inn. "I will rest while you are gone. My feet need a reprieve. Then we can share tea when you return. I will just browse a few shops nearby." Her luminous face and that disarming smile rendered Ray incapable of refusal, warmth creeping across his own cheeks. Still, concern surfaced. "Will you be all right on your own?" Adeline, secretly startled by the tenderness in his voice, maintained her composure. "Of course, hurry back. Sometimes a lady simply prefers to browse by herself." Ray nodded, content with the arrangement, and promised to return swiftly. Adeline sent him off with a gentle wave and a soft smile. But the moment he had taken a few steps away, that smile evaporated entirely. "I need to investigate something in secret." "Will this work?" she thought, her gaze dropping to the small bag resting before her. Ray, 500 years old and still oblivious, noticed nothing amiss. A few strides further, however, he halted, having caught sight of a suspicious figure weaving through the crowd. He slipped into a narrow alley, confirmed the tale, and deliberately let the stalker follow. The man hissed under his breath, "Damn it, where is this guy wandering? If I lose him, I am finished." Mid-complaint, a hand seized him by the collar. Ray hauled him off the ground and pressed a razor-edged dagger against his throat, his voice glacial. "Who are you and why are you following me? Your life hangs on the quality of your answer." The would-be thief stared into Ray's frigid, murderous eyes, trembling too violently to form words. Ray released him, letting him scurry away with a handful of terse warnings. But then something caught his eye. a badge the man had dropped. An eagle emblem. Unease coiled in Ray's gut. Meanwhile, wielding her newly mastered infinite space magic, an advanced spell capable of expanding the boundaries of a confined area, Adeline slipped through her bag's opening and teleported straight back to the inn. In her previous life, Ray had actually acknowledged her spatial magic as quite impressive. She grinned, brimming with satisfaction at pulling it off once more. Ray will circle back once the tea shop staff inform him I have returned to the inn. But he had not appeared. Had they somehow crossed paths without knowing? Anticipation built until a knock sounded at the door. "My lady, your drink is prepared." Adeline frowned. She had not ordered anything, wanting to wait for Ray. Before she could voice her objection, someone burst through the doorway and clamped a drugged cloth over her mouth. "Koken," she recognized in the instant before her eyes fell shut. Why now of all moments, when Ray is not here? She remembered Koken as someone she needed to find, but hardly under these circumstances. He stood on our side, furious when my position as Duchess was stripped away. He is the Eagle Mercenaries' deputy leader. Adeline's thoughts spiraled. Not just him, Maven and others all cared for me deeply. I must locate them in order to keep them alive. But why were they all stronger than me? And why did I let myself forget? Her thoughts dissolved, her arms went limp, and consciousness slipped away. Fragments of memory churned. In the final battle of my previous life, the Devas vanished once more. Wakan, Aster, Mavin, Chokin, Avid, every last one dead. When the blade pierced through me, Ray stood utterly alone. Dusk settled its amber veil over Makran as Ray returned to the inn, only to find Wakan lounging in the lobby, casually gnawing on a sausage. Wakan asked why he was back so soon, and Ray explained that Adeline had instructed him to return ahead of her. Wakan stared for a beat, then burst into incredulous laughter. After a round of ribbing, his tone sharpened. "Where is Adeline?" The moment he learned she had been left alone at the tea shop, Wakan went rigid with alarm. And Ray, the realization crashing over him simultaneously, felt ice flood his veins. Wakan bellowed, "Captain, this is Mokran." Even as Wakan launched into a furious tirade, Ray was already sprinting, terror driving every stride as he cursed himself savagely for getting lost in her smile and her talk of afternoon tea, for leaving her unguarded. I am an absolute fool. Ray and Wakan burst into the tea shop and interrogated the server, but the truth was already written across the empty room. No one matching the description of a blonde woman with violet eyes had set foot inside. Despite Wakan's desperate pleas for the man to search his memory, the answer remained the same. After a moment, the server shrugged with infuriating indifference. "Look, pal, do you have any idea how many people vanish around here on a daily basis? Am I meant to track and tally every one of them? Maybe she is just out for a stroll or something. Blonde lady dressed like a man? Never laid eyes on her." A dangerous spark ignited in Ray's gaze. In one fluid motion, he seized the lying server by the throat and slammed him against the wall. "You filthy liar. You just referenced a lady dressed like a man. How would you know that detail? Talk, or your head parts company with your shoulders right here?" Tears streamed from the server's bulging eyes as he stared into Ray's merciless, frost-cold gaze and understood with absolute certainty. This was not a bluff. Ray's grip hoisted the man clear off the ground, his control fracturing, until Wakan seized his arm. "Captain, he cannot tell us where Adeline is if you crush his windpipe." Ray released the server, who crumpled to the floor with a dull thud. Ray's face had gone ashen, words deserting him entirely. Wakan crouched to the server's level, wearing a terrifyingly pleasant smile. "So you mentioned that plenty of people go missing around here, correct?" A handful of pointed questions was all it took for the man to crack. "The Eagle Gang, they grabbed her!" Ray's eyes narrowed to slits, the scattered pieces locking into place. Meanwhile, in the kidnappers' hideout, muffled voices argued over whether their prize had been injured during the scuffle. Adeline stirred, dimly registering two men hovering above her. "Hey, think she is coming around?" Still half submerged in a drugged haze, dread clawed at her as a shard of memory surfaced from the depths. Why did everyone perish in my previous life? The divas wielded such staggering power, so how did they all disappear? Was it the Demon King's awakening? She needed the full tapestry of her memories to find the answer. But existential mysteries would have to wait. She had been kidnapped, after all. "Hey, lady, if you are awake, answer us. No point overthinking it," the two men prodded. Adeline grasped with sudden clarity that she had stumbled upon the very people she had been searching for, though the circumstances left something to be desired. She needed to navigate this precarious situation first. A brilliant smile broke across her face. You have actually saved me some effort by coming to find me. I was the one looking for you. Her gaze locked onto the man with the cold amber eyes. A pleasure, Avid. He went rigid, shock fracturing his composure. I don't know you, he said flatly, his sword scraping free of its sheath. How do you know that name? Adeline brushed the blade aside with casual grace, her smile never wavering. You will deeply regret killing me. Avid let out a dismissive snort. Every nobleman who had ever knelt before his blade delivered that same tired warning. Adeline, however, cut straight to the heart of the matter. Their objective was money. Let us not waste each other's time. Intrigued that their captive understood their motives so precisely, Avid listened as Adeline laid it out. My party occupies the finest suite at Manhwa Inn. We shop extravagantly. We travel without a single escort. A kidnapper's dream scenario for extortion. Her gaze sharpened like a drawn blade as she added, perhaps the reason we need no escorts is that we are simply too powerful for them to matter. At that exact moment, chaos erupted beyond the walls. Koken burst through the door, shouting, Boss! Panic rippled through the kidnappers as they realized an intruder had breached their perimeter. Before anyone could react, Wakan's booming voice echoed from outside. Oh, Captain, we storming in together? Why'd you charge ahead without me? Come on, let's have some fun. Wakan stood there with a wild, eager grin, while Ray's eyes blazed with murderous fury, and every soul in that room turned to stone. Avid, ever the pragmatist, threw his hands up in surrender. Ah, so that explains the composure, he said, nodding toward Adeline. You were banking on backup the whole time. Adeline stood there utterly dumbstruck. I did not expect them at all. What is happening? My entire plan just collapsed. How on earth did you track me here? She demanded. Wakan recounted the frantic search, especially Ray's. The captain tore the city apart looking for you. When every lead ran dry, he unleashed swordsmanship magic to sweep every corner of Mokran. Absolute suicide. Any Suo within range could have detected him, but he didn't flinch. Said it wasn't important. The weight of that revelation struck Adeline squarely in the chest, flooding her with equal parts warmth and dread. Ray waved it off. That is enough, he murmured, and offered her his hand with quiet tenderness. Her cheeks burned crimson, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Ray, you truly came for me? I spared their lives, Ray stated flatly, because of our agreement. Adeline knew violence was never his instinct. Yet the lengths he had gone to, it kindled hope in her heart even as it terrified her. Avid threw up his arms. Would somebody please explain what is going on? Neither Ray nor Adeline spared him a glance, entirely lost in each other. Snapping back to the present, Adeline gathered her hair into a knot and announced brightly, Allow me to introduce myself. I am Adeline Rotlin, wife of this dark duke standing beside me. Avid visibly trembled before their warmly menacing smiles. Nevertheless, everyone settled into chairs to negotiate. Avid, ashen-faced thought, they call this negotiating? Adeline pitched her vision of justice with eloquence, but the two men flanking her rendered words unnecessary. Their glares alone could have closed any deal. Avid raised his beer mug with shaking hands. So you want to negotiate, about what exactly? With honeyed sweetness, Adeline extended her offer. Join her as a contracted mercenary company. Would he accept? Refusal was impossible with Ray looming directly behind her, his eyes broadcasting a single crystal-clear message. Got any objections to what my wife just proposed? Avid capitulated immediately, but pressed. Do you actually understand what mercenary work entails? Adeline did not so much as blink. Of course. Why would I recruit you for sport? Avid leaned forward, his tone turning grave. Harass Avenzak, even emperors refuse to cross him. And you genuinely believe mercenaries like us, the notorious Black Wind, can transform into proper knights? Adeline lifted her tea to her lips and smiled over the rim. I know exactly who you are. You will do anything for the right price. The name Black Wind was earned because you leave nothing but despair behind you. Is that not right, Avid Kanta? Avid went rigid, stunned that she knew a surname he had buried years ago. How do you know that name? Adeline set her cup down with deliberate calm. Does it matter? The point is that I do. She smiled serenely. Avid fell silent, defeated, his mind racing. Out of everyone in this world, why us? They are obscenely wealthy. The Dark Duke's territory should not even know it has a ruler. Every nerve in his body prickled as Wakan and Ray's killing intent radiated outward like heat from a furnace. Adeline's grin widened. You understand now? No elite knight would set foot in the Darklands voluntarily, but mercenaries who chase coin are far easier to persuade. Rising to her feet, she planted both hands on the table and declared, But that is only half the reason. She strolled past Avid, continuing over her shoulder. Because I believe you have the potential to become extraordinary knights. Avid narrowed his eyes, curious despite himself. What makes you so certain? Adeline laughed openly. I am a seer. Forgive me, but I cannot elaborate further. Trade secret. Avid groaned and turned to Ray. Oh, Duke, is your wife always this relentless? Wakan flashed a cheeky grin. That is her signature charm. I shouldn't be saying that, though, right, Captain? Ray remained silent for a long beat, contemplative, before muttering, Sometimes I want to crack open that little head of hers just to see what goes on inside. Avid, doubly crushed, clutched his skull in despair, agreed to serve the Venzaks, and immediately pivoted to discussing compensation. Adeline offered gold, lodging, and combat training. Unimpressed, Avid pointed out he could secure all of that on his own. Before the words fully left his mouth, the two towering figures flanking Adeline unsheathed their blades in perfect unison, eyes gleaming with predatory light. Avid scrambled for one final condition. When Adeline asked what it was, he declared flatly, The world. She tilted her head, amused. And what exactly is the world to you? Avid answered without hesitation. The Roman continent. Adeline burst out laughing. I assumed your ambition was global conquest, and it turns out you only want a single continent? Avid blinked, bewildered. An entire continent sounds trivial to this woman? Adeline pressed further, her voice softening with meaning. I was under the impression that Elise was your world. That shattered every last wall Avid had built. Elise was his everything, his reason and his ruin. He shot to his feet, voice cracking. How do you know about Elise? Ray's glare cut through the air like a blade. Lower your voice. Avid sank back into his chair, trembling with raw emotion. Adeline swiftly laid out her true offer. She would find Elise. That was the ultimate price of his loyalty. Still, Avid resisted, haunted by fears of manipulation, servitude, and inevitable abandonment once his usefulness expired. Adeline met his eyes and said quietly, I understand that feeling. I have been discarded before, too. Avid wrestled with the decision in silence. Were it only his own fate hanging in the balance, he would have accepted without blinking. But the lives of his comrades weighed on every calculation. He could not gamble recklessly with their futures. Koken gripped his shoulder firmly, urging him to take the leap. The rest of the crew erupted in support, voices tripping over each other with enthusiasm at the prospect of abandoning their outlaw hideouts, swearing a knight's oath, and building something worth fighting for. And so the pact was sealed between Adeline and the Eagle mercenaries. Without missing a beat, Adeline made her next audacious request, borrowing their ship to reach Mavane Island, leaving Avid reeling at the sheer depth of her foreknowledge. The Eagles received 1 month to prepare and guarantee safe passage through the night forest. At the designated rendezvous, Venzak retainers would escort them to the estate. Everything had fallen into place with almost unsettling ease. And that very smoothness made Adeline nervous, much like sitting across from Ray at this candlelit, flower-draped dinner table. Ray mentioned offhandedly that Wakan would not be joining them, having gorged himself into a stupor earlier. Adeline stiffened, suddenly self-conscious. The two of them had never shared a meal like this before. An awkward silence settled over her. Ray studied her face, his mind circling back to that unfamiliar grief in her eyes when she had told Avid she understood abandonment. He had never seen that expression on her before. What happened to her? Adeline broke the quiet first. Is there something you want to say to me? He shook his head. No, nothing in particular. Then, almost too quickly, he produced the enchanted bag she had lost during the kidnapping and offered it to her. Her face lit up with genuine delight as she thanked him, certain the bag was gone forever. He mentioned that he had sensed magic the moment he touched it. Adeline waved it off, claiming she had purchased it from an ordinary shop and that it functioned like an infinite space container. Relief washed through her when he simply murmured, "Oh," and gazed at her with quiet thoughtfulness instead of pressing further. Lifting her wineglass, Adeline teased, "If anyone were watching, they would assume you are staring because I am irresistibly beautiful." She had expected to fluster him. Instead, Ray held her gaze with solemn intensity and said softly, Yeah, that is exactly why. Adeline choked on her wine. He did not relent. I am staring because you are beautiful. The way your cheeks flush like that reminds me of a ripe peach. Her entire face erupted in scarlet. Has he lost his mind? Ray tilted his head. You don't like being called beautiful? No, it is not that, she whispered, her eyes dimming as the sudden tenderness crashed over her like a wave. It does not feel bad at all. She wrestled herself steady, thinking, this version of him is not the same man who spent years avoiding me. If I let myself fall, I will be the one bleeding when it ends. Burying her ache beneath a brittle laugh, she said, regardless, you have certainly upheld your role as a husband, even complimenting my looks. We truly do resemble a real couple now. Ray went still, as though she had driven a blade between his ribs. His lips pressed into a tight line, his hand trembling against the tablecloth. You are my wife, he said, barely above a whisper. Adeline met his eyes without flinching. I am playing the wife because it benefits us both. In her unwavering stare, Ray saw his own reflection staring back at him, heavy with grief. Do you never... She rose abruptly, palms flat on the table. Forgive me. I have lost my appetite. May I return to my room? Ray lunged after her, seizing her wrist, voice raw with desperation. You are the one who called me your husband, who lit up every time you heard the word. Adeline froze mid-step, torn apart between longing and self-preservation, her lips sealed into a bloodless line. She wrenched her hand free and retreated to her room without another word. Around them, the inn hummed with the carefree laughter of other guests. Ray sat alone at the abandoned table, untouched plates before him, consumed entirely by thoughts of her. He had wanted to coax out her smile, yet he had fumbled every step. Even catching a glimpse of her brought him joy, but her tangled web of sorrow and forced brightness unsettled him to the bone. Sleep refused to come easily for Ray that night. In 500 years, he had never once dreamed, until now. Was this some Seo-crafted illusion? No, it was not prophecy, it was memory, vivid and inescapable. He watched himself arrive at the Rotlin estate to collect Adeline. Her father's displeasure was unmistakable, and Dream Ray simmered with his own irritation over the arranged marriage. When Adeline appeared, her face was tight with apprehension, her frightened eyes stirring an involuntary pang of pity. Then, without warning, she shifted into a bold, imperious mask, a transformation he had been too blind to notice at the time. The moment he turned to leave, she wept in silence, watching him walk away. Back then, he had dismissed the entire arrangement as a nuisance, even complaining to Aster about her supposed arrogance, while Aster described the timid, gentle girl he had met when visiting the Rotlins on Ray's behalf. During the forest teleportation, she had collapsed from sheer exhaustion. Dream Ray cradled her, genuinely worried, his fingers tracing the curve of her face, smoothing stray golden strands transfixed by her lips in the devastating beauty of her at rest. Yet when she woke, her emotions lurched from tender surprise to panicked embarrassment, and she scrambled out of his arms as if burned. He concluded that his touch disgusted her. From that moment forward, Ray kept his distance. When she first set foot in the night forest, grotesque trees twisted toward her with grasping branches, and she trembled violently. Yet Ray, locked behind his wall of cold indifference, offered her nothing. She huddled behind him, fingers white-knuckled in the fabric of her skirt, eyes brimming with unspeakable sorrow. It was never hatred. He simply had no idea how to speak to a woman. Her lonely silhouette trailing behind them carved guilt into his chest. She must have despised every moment. Her tears, her fragile frame, so achingly pitiful. A sudden gust of wind jolted Ray awake. Sitting upright, he steadied his breathing. Just a dream, right? Morning light spilled through the window as he turned the visions over in his mind. She carries a vulnerable, lonely side, exactly as Aster once described. Yet I never recognized it until this dream forced me to see. That same morning, Adeline lay awake replaying her own cruelty at dinner. Guilt gnawed at her, but the scars of her first life ran too deep. She was terrified of surrendering her heart a second time. Draped in nothing but a thin cloak over her nightgown, she stepped out with anxious, hesitant steps and found Ray already seated in the sitting room. She called his name softly and walked toward him. Ray looked up. Do you dream the way I do, my Duchess? Taken aback, Adeline remembered that Devas were not supposed to dream at all. They fumbled through an awkward exchange trying to verify it. Then, abruptly, she bowed her head and murmured an apology for walking out on dinner. There is no need, Ray said, his fist tightening against his knee, voice strained thin. Do not apologize. Adeline feared she had wounded him with careless words and did not dare let herself hope for anything more from this man. Meanwhile, Ray was quietly agonizing, with no idea how to close the distance between them. Adeline turned toward the door, announcing she would eat breakfast with Joaquin downstairs. Ray stood rooted in place, the dream surging back. In it, he had been invisible, reaching for her as she wept alone. Adeline. He had called, but she could neither see nor hear him. That same suffocating despair gripped him now. Why does she mirror the dream so perfectly? She should be happy, not building walls against me. The trio finally gathered for breakfast, including Joaquin, who was practically vibrating with joy at eating something genuinely delicious for once, a stark contrast to the miserable fare at the dark estate. Joaquin and Adeline bantered with their usual effortless warmth. Ray observed from across the table, a familiar sting of jealousy twisting in his chest. She opens up to everyone except me. Once Adeline excused herself, the two men turned to the subject of dreams. As a divas, Joaquin had never experienced one and could not grasp what Ray described. Still, he offered some blunt, practical counsel about love, basic wisdom on human psychology, and the nature of genuine affection. When Adeline returned, Ray was still quietly brooding over the chasm she maintained between them. Adeline, however, was practically buzzing with anticipation. She steered them toward the arena for the day's betting. Pooling every last coin of Joaquin's funds, 10 gold, 50 silver, and roughly 655 talon coins, she wagered the entire sum on a single match. They examined the tournament board and immediately spotted the overwhelming favorite. The Great Thief of the Continent, a name whispered with equal parts fear and reverence. Adeline broke down the bookmaker's scheme with surgical precision. Everyone piles their money on the Great Thief. If he loses, the pot flows to those who bet against him. Simple enough, right? Should the Great Thief fall to someone other than the house's chosen puppet, the payout structure would shift dramatically in their favor. She delegated the task to Joaquin with complete confidence in his ability to execute. Without hesitation, they locked in their wager, stamped with Adeline's pooled fortune, on an obscure fighter called Wolf Fang, a complete unknown that no one else had touched. The bet ignited a firestorm of gossip, with skeptics practically salivating at the chance to swallow their money, heaping ever more gold onto the Great Thief. Wolf Fang's potential payout skyrocketed to 2,000 gold coins, a sum matching the fighter's own initial stake. Ray and Joaquin gaped, utterly stunned at the swollen sack of gold before them. Adeline observed that a single coin from that pile could sustain 2 commoners for an entire lifetime. She had no intention of spending a single piece on herself. As they turned to leave, a sharp-eyed, middle-aged man intercepted them, the arena's owner in the flesh. He opened with threats of a cheating investigation, but Adeline pivoted instantly, dismantling his entire operation. She exposed precisely how he rigged matches to ensure the Great Thief collapsed in the final round, funneling all profits to the house. Her reasoning was airtight, but her true leverage stood on either side of her. Joaquin's hand found his sword hilt, his glare promising to disassemble one of the owner's lackeys on the spot. The crooked old man's gaze finally drifted to the cold, commanding figure beside Adeline, Harass Evenzak, a man whose name made emperors lose sleep. The instant he grasped that this woman must be the Dark Duke's wife, the owner, a born survivor above all else, folded into a deep bow, pledging the warmest hospitality for their entire party. The Eagle mercenaries who had stacked their money on the Great Thief hemorrhaged a fortune in the upset. Their grudging admiration for Adeline's brilliance deepened considerably. Ray told her plainly, "We have more than enough wealth at home, you know that." Yet when she murmured that it was not truly her money, Ray insisted the distinction was meaningless. The sorrow flickering behind her eyes stopped him cold. Back at the inn, Avid delivered an urgent report. 5 orcs had materialized in the forest beyond the city walls. Joaquin, who had assumed orcs were long extinct, recognized a golden opportunity. Hunting them for bounty would be a perfect proving ground for the mercenaries. Adeline agreed, recommending 4 or 5 fighters per orc as their first real combat exercise. Avid's crew surged forward eagerly. Adeline moved to join them, but Ray's hand descended firmly onto her shoulder. "Too dangerous," he said. "Orcs are the Demon King's creations." Adeline whipped around. "I know that, which is precisely why I am worried regular mercenaries cannot handle them." Ray's jaw set. Whether they can or cannot is irrelevant. You should not concern yourself with it. The words had barely left his mouth before he recognized his mistake. That was not what he meant, but Adeline's temper was already ignited. Wakan leaped in, only to make matters worse. What the captain means is that we should stay safe and leave the fighting to the mercenaries. His expression grew serious as he added, Captain, a single orc is dangerous enough. 5 clustered together? Something is deeply wrong. Ray's brow furrowed in thought. The Demon King may be stirring. With that many orcs at once, we lack the holy water necessary to purify them. We should remain at the inn for the time being. Adeline pushed back, her voice rising. We cannot abandon Avid out there. I need to be with them. Ray seized her shoulders, physically refusing to let her go, but her agitation only escalated. At its peak, he said with raw honesty, I am worried you will get hurt. Adeline hesitated, wavering. Of course you are, because I am the seer. If even I sustain injuries. Damn it! Ray erupted. Seer, stop hiding behind that word. I am worried about you. Locked in his fierce embrace, Adeline went perfectly still, heat flooding her cheeks. He is worried about me? His grip softened, arms loosening around her. I do not want you to be hurt. The truth crystallized in her mind. She had always believed her worth to Ray hinged entirely on her prophecies, but perhaps that was never the whole story. Voice barely audible, she asked, Do you truly mean that? Ray flushed deeply and looked away. Because you are my wife. Standing there together, they looked every bit the devoted couple. Wakan stared, slack-jawed, then broke into a wide grin, volunteering to handle the orcs himself. With my holy sword, those overgrown beasts are nothing. Adeline cut him off immediately. You must not unsheathe the holy sword. Its energy signature could alert the Suos to our location. The real danger was Hela detecting them, but she could not speak that name aloud. Terrified that Hela's prophetic sight might expose her as no true seer, Adeline steeled herself and prepared to accompany Wakan against the orcs. Ray's blunt no stopped her in her tracks. With a single arm, he caught her around the waist and pulled her back. His voice was calm, assured. Even without the holy sword, Wakan is more than capable. Adeline, blushing and flustered, stepped back from him, moved by his protectiveness yet haunted by echoes of the past. Even when I took that killing blow in my first life, I told myself I loved him enough to believe he had a reason for everything. This version of Ray is so different, kind in a way that cuts deeper than any blade. Though his transformation stemmed from her own changed approach in this life, she could not stop loving him. Mortals burn so brightly in their brief spans, blazing with passions so fierce and tangled that angels and demons alike cannot fathom their beauty. She met Ray's eyes steadily. I am worried for Wakan. I am not as fragile as you think, Ray answered softly, almost poetically. But I am. A 500-year-old Durlo calling himself weak, because shielding her in battle left him exposed. You are my weakness, Adeline, he murmured, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Her heart forgot how to beat. Deep in the forest, the orcs lay in mangled heaps, slain beyond any hope of resurrection. Koken surveyed the carnage, Wakan's handiwork, and the warrior stood amid it all wearing a satisfied grin that could have belonged to an actual demon. Avid's eyes blazed with admiration. That is the rogue I have been searching for my entire life. Wakan reveled in the plunder, orc hides, severed heads, vials of blood and bones, a small fortune waiting to be sold. Avid, still awestruck, noted that Wakan had felled each orc with a single devastating strike while his mercenaries, fighting at full capacity, could barely keep pace. The slaughter concluded so swiftly that by the time Ray and Adeline finished their tender exchange, the only thing left to do was claim a share of the spoils. Adeline waved a generous hand. I will take just the hearts and blood. Everything else belongs to you. Avid and his crew erupted in jubilation. She glanced at Wakan. You do not mind, do you? Wakan, hardly desperate for coin, could not have cared less about hawking monster parts. Avid, moved nearly to tears, declared, Choosing the right master makes all the difference in this world. Koken scoffed from behind him. Says the man who literally kidnapped her. Avid spun around. Shut your mouth, you absolute fool. In the quiet of the inn's suite, Adeline lay in an exhausted, dreamless sleep. Ray, feeling the faintest thaw in the distance between them, carried a candle into her room and set it down with care on the bedside table. He settled beside her and simply watched her beautiful, slumbering face. searching for a name for this unfamiliar ache. As an angel, the anxiety this woman stirred in him was suffocating beyond any language he possessed. When she turned those loving eyes on him, it felt as though he were standing impossibly far away, watching through glass. Perhaps I truly have gone mad. Weariness finally overtook him. He told himself he would rest beside her for just a moment, then slumped forward, his head coming to rest near hers on the edge of the bed. Another dream unfolded. Once more, he became an invisible spectator trapped inside the theater of his own existence. Maven's voice cut through. "You are keeping the Duchess in the room next to Wakan?" Ray recoiled in shock. Unlike his previous dream, this scene bore no resemblance to current reality. Her room was beside his, was it not? More disturbing still, Dream Ray responded to Maven with ice-cold dismissal, ignoring the steward's pitying glance toward Adeline. After Maven departed, Dream Ray abandoned his desk, drifted to the window, and lost himself in thoughts of Adeline. What am I doing to keep her from being afraid of me? I cannot understand why her face, on the verge of tears, haunts my every waking moment. All day long, I think of Adeline. I am completely, helplessly captivated. The real Ray observed his dream self's solitary anguish, drowning in questions without answers. The vision shifted to Ray and Aster in the study. Aster voiced his frustration that Adeline, after 6 months at the estate, had not delivered a single prophecy. Their mood was bleak, orcs multiplying at alarming rates, the Demon King almost certainly stirring, the heavens teetering on the edge of collapse. The dream shifted again. Ray slipped through Adeline's bedroom window under cover of darkness, undetected. She sat alone, radiating quiet sadness, her gaze fixed on him with heartbreaking tenderness. Unable to summon a single gentle word, he defaulted to the only thing he knew, asking about prophetic dreams. There were none. Prophecy was never truly his priority, yet every conversation with her inevitably circled back to predictions of the future. The real Ray watched this loop of failure with mounting self-contempt. Neither version of himself, dreamed nor waking, knew how to voice what actually mattered. Dream Ray turned toward the window to leave, then paused and asked why she had never refused the marriage. Adeline's cheeks colored with surprise and fragile hope before darkening with resignation. She explained that her entire life had been one cage after another, and this marriage was simply a transfer to a more tolerable one. Dream Ray departed, silently vowing to take her beyond these walls and ease her suffering. The real Ray jolted awake, his emotions torn raw by the dream's visceral weight. Why was he having these visions? Dread consumed him, as though the dream might devour reality itself and leave nothing behind. He recognized the bitter truth. Like his dream self, he would never have spoken to Adeline if she had not reached out first. Determined to shatter that pattern, he steeled his resolve. At dawn, as pale light crept into the room, Adeline stirred and opened her eyes, only to jolt upright at the sight of Ray sitting beside her bed. "I wanted to see you," he said with plain, unguarded honesty. "I am here because I wanted to be near you." Adeline, still half tangled in sleep, could scarcely process his words. The Harasi Venzak I remember would never say, "I want to see you." The raw intensity of his own confession caught up with Ray. Color flooded his face, and he fled her room without another word. Adeline sat motionless on the bed, wondering whether everything had gone strange or whether he had merely come to verify her seer abilities. Still, she could not deny it. She had navigated this life far better than the last, and that fragile progress kindled a flicker of hope. Later that day, Ray made an announcement that stunned everyone. He would be sleeping in Wakan's room. Adeline immediately spiraled, convinced she had said something terrible in her sleep. Her spirits sank visibly, and she failed to disguise it. Ray, concerned by the sudden shadow crossing her face, he reached for her hand and asked why she looked so troubled. She admitted quietly that she feared she had upset him enough to drive him away. Ray shook his head. "I'm doing this to confirm something. I would never be angry with you, regardless of what you said or did, because it is you." Wakan's jaw nearly hit the floor at his captain's transformation, and even Adeline found it difficult to believe these words had come from Ray. He cannot possibly say such things so easily. They half-joked that a demon must have possessed Ray's soul. Ray, genuinely offended, stormed out of the room. Watching his retreating back, Adeline realized with quiet certainty that every word had been sincere. That night, sleeping beside Wakan, Ray did not dream. The visions only came when he was near her. The following morning, Preparations began for the voyage to Mavane Island. Wakan and Adeline, thick as thieves as always, selected suitable swords together. Aboard the ship, Adeline chose a separate cabin to give Ray breathing room, assuming that was what he preferred. His expression crumbled, the disappointment written plainly across his face. Alone in her quarters, Adeline spread a map across the desk and strategized her approach to the siren, determined to save Maven from the fate that had claimed him in her previous life. Back then, she had failed Aster as a seer, Maven had perished, and they never managed to locate Riley, the healing angel. She swore to find Riley this time, but the immediate priority was neutralizing the siren before it fully awakened and devoured everyone around her. Tracing her finger along the shipping route, she tapped a cluster of reefs, the island where they had fought the creature in her first life. The vessel pressed onward, burning through magic stones as the seemingly hopeless search dragged on. The ship's captain was horrified to learn they were hunting a monstrous sea beast, but it was far too late to turn around. The siren, a colossal nightmare, half human and half octopus, possessed a hypnotic song capable of shattering sanity, and tentacles strong enough to splinter warships into driftwood. Wakan swore to keep Adeline safe above all else, but she had not come to be protected. She was here to protect someone. She unveiled her secret weapon, explosives fashioned from orc hearts, engineered to detonate inside the siren's belly. The plan demanded surgical precision. Mid-discussion, thirst overtook her. Wakan reported that fresh water had run out. Only liquor remained. He scrounged up a sweet pink wine intended for gentler palates. Adeline took a cautious sip, found it delightful, and promptly drained an entire oversized glass. She was drunk in seconds. Ray arrived to discover his wife swaying on unsteady legs, latching onto his arm and giggling. "Hiraeth, Wakan, this is my husband." Wakan vanished at maximum speed, leaving Ray seething in his wake. Adeline mumbled against his chest, "I can't walk anymore. Can you take me to my room?" Ray's fury dissolved instantly, his expression softening into something helplessly tender. "All right," he murmured, lifting her into his arms like a princess, grumbling softly but with unmistakable fondness. She chattered happily against his shoulder. "It's so weird. I never could have imagined this in my past life. But right now we look like a genuinely happy couple." Adeline rambled on until her words slurred into silence and she went limp. Ray, 3 parts exasperated, 7 parts utterly indulgent, thought, "Past life? She is merely drunk, spouting nonsense. Are we not already a real couple?" He laid her gently in bed where she sank into deep, oblivious sleep, blissfully unaware of the husband hovering anxiously above her. Exhaustion finally claimed him too, and he allowed himself to collapse on the floor beside her bed, quietly hoping for another dream to answer the questions clawing at his mind. The dream obliged, continuing precisely where the last had ended. A woman materialized before him and announced, "You have finally returned, Duke Heresy Venzak. I am the one who will grant you a glorious future." She had trendy iPhone 17 Pro-colored hair and blazing eyes to match, and she introduced herself as Hila Alton. After a night of hard drinking, Adeline woke clutching her throbbing skull. "Ugh, my head is killing me. Why am I in bed?" Her memories swam in fog as she groaned, "Water, water." Glancing around, she discovered Ray slumped asleep on the floor beside her bed. Why is he sleeping here? 1,000 questions crowded her thoughts, but she set them all aside, choosing instead to sit in silence and steal glances at him. After decades spent together in another lifetime, the feeling that surfaced strongest was pure admiration for how devastatingly handsome he was. For the first time in any life, she could study him freely, mapping every line and shadow of his sleeping face with quiet, breathless intensity. Adeline could not stop herself from whispering, "Ray, the first time you spoke my name in the past, I could never forget that warm, deep voice. Is it not strange? I cannot even recall the moment itself, yet your voice overflowed with love. So I need to understand why you called to me that way." As the words drifted from her lips, her hand reached toward his face, drawn to the closed lids of his eyes. But Ray's gaze snapped open, locking with hers. She gasped, a small, startled, "Oh!" and snatched her hand back. Ray said nothing. In one swift motion, he seized her wrist and drew her into his arms, his other hand settling against her shoulder with the natural ease of a true lover. "Ray," she stammered, flustered, grasping desperately for an excuse to escape his embrace. But the spell shattered when Ray asked, his voice suddenly grave, Adeline, do you know who Hela Alton is? Her heart stopped dead. Her eyes blew wide with shock. The worst has arrived. Panicked, she denied any knowledge of Hela and, claiming she needed water, preferably ice cold, begged him to fetch some. Ray studied her with unconcealed skepticism, but complied, rising to fulfill her request. The instant the door closed, Adeline collapsed onto the mattress, hands trembling violently as she pressed them together. Memories of Hela flooded her. How relentlessly their paths had collided in her first life. How she had been imprisoned in the Black Tower, where that life reached its brutal end. Terror seized her as she imagined Ray returning to the dark estate, investigating Hela Alton, and discovering that his wife was no seer at all. Everything will repeat exactly as it did before, no matter how desperately I have fought to change it. Ray, filling a glass with ice water, turned Adeline's panicked expression over in his mind. She is lying, but why? He shared the question briefly with Wakan, but gained nothing useful. His working theory crystallized. Perhaps these dreams reflected a genuine past he had actually lived. Resolving not to confront her further, he refused to summon the same terrified look he had witnessed in his visions. Adeline lay motionless on the bed, drowning in the dread that everything she had painstakingly rebuilt, her fragile bonds with everyone, her tentative connection with Ray, would crumble the moment her secret surfaced. When Ray knocked and entered with the iced water, he asked gently, "Are you all right?" She took a hesitant sip and said, "Ray, were you aware that a siren and a demon beast lurk along our route to Mavane Island? I intend to awaken and destroy them." Ray stared at her, appalled. "Why?" Adeline lowered her head, fingers tightening around the glass until they went white. "To prevent a catastrophe I cannot explain right now." Bewildered yet powerless to refuse, Ray agreed, only because he had sworn to honor her wishes. Adeline sat in the heavy silence that followed, turning a single thought over and over. Why is he so kind to me, even without knowing who I truly am? Or has he already stopped trusting me? She announced that she would dedicate 3 days to locating and eliminating the siren. Ray pledged his full support, and together they headed toward breakfast, both knowing Wakan would grumble bitterly and demand extra portions if they kept him waiting any longer. As Adeline crouched to tie her shoelaces, she straightened and stepped ahead of Ray, her voice dropping to something fragile and raw. "I want to ask you something. Am I useful?" Her voice quavered, her eyes glistening and desperate, the exact expression Ray had witnessed in his dream. Alarmed, Ray hurried after her, pressing to know why she felt that way. But she deflected with a vague murmur and walked on ahead. The plan moved forward without delay. Ray and Wakan dove beneath the waves to search for the siren's lair among the jagged reefs. Each time they broke the surface, Adeline rushed to the railing with anxious eyes, but the answer was always the same: nothing found. The sprawling reef system, riddled with endless crevices and hollows, made tracking the creature a near-hopeless endeavor. Their captain delivered grim news. The magic stones were almost depleted. Adeline resolved that if the siren remained hidden by tomorrow, they would abandon the hunt and sail for Mavane Island. That night, once the ship had fallen silent and every soul lay sleeping, Adeline stole onto the deck and initiated a search spell. She inscribed a vast, luminous circle of advanced runes across the planks, a spell that had eluded her mastery in her previous life, and released it into the dark water. To her elation, the spell activated flawlessly on the first attempt. Deep beneath the ocean, she detected the siren's unmistakable presence and celebrated in triumphant silence. Mid-cast, she recalled what Ray had once told her. "You'll never use this spell." Had he meant she lacked the talent, or that the occasion would simply never arise? She stared at her own hands in disbelief. When exactly did I gain this kind of power? Pleased with her discovery, she resolved to bury every trace of her spellwork and slip back to bed. Tomorrow none of this would show. What she did not realize was that Ray had been watching from the mast, quietly wondering whether she had just performed a search spell, one notoriously difficult to execute. He shook the thought away, certain such complexity was beyond her. Come morning, Adeline pointed brightly to a location on the map where she believed the siren lurked. When Wakan pressed her for how she had pinpointed it, she flashed a grin and credited her seer abilities. Wakan applauded her, then asked the obvious follow-up. "Now that you've found the thing, what's the plan?" "Wake it up and kill it?" Both Ray and Wakan gaped at her, incredulous. "How?" "By detonating the orc-hard explosives I crafted against the reef walls," she answered matter-of-factly. Bomb in hand, Wakan plunged into the ocean with grim determination. He cast a subtle locating spell, careful not to rouse the slumbering beast. After a tense search, he recoiled. Found it? This thing is enormous? The plan was simple: plant the charge and get out fast. Before he could kick toward the surface, a colossal tentacle coiled around his leg. The siren's crimson eyes blazed open, locking onto him. Outmatched, and he knew it. Wakan snapped his fingers, launching a distress flare of magic toward the ship. On deck, Ray and Adeline caught the burst of light erupting from the water. Ray immediately stepped in front of her. Something has gone wrong. The siren has Wakan. Adeline's blood turned to ice. Her eyes blew wide, one hand pressed against her mouth. What if destiny simply shifts its target? What if saving Maven means losing Wakan instead? Reading the terror on her face, Ray steadied his voice. Stay calm, Adeline. Get back to your room. With Wakan trapped down there, nobody is left to guard you. She argued that she could defend herself perfectly well, but Ray remained unconvinced, and his mounting frustration spilled into sharp words. Tears streaked down her cheeks. You promised you would never be angry with me. Their quarrel raged on, even as Wakan's strength ebbed beneath the waves, and the siren's haunting melody drifted across the open sea. Ray commanded her to remain safe aboard the ship. Following Adeline's earlier instructions, the crew stuffed wax deep into their ears.